Everything that we talk about today is found in chapter 16 of my book, The New Sport of Minkenry. So as I go through this video explaining how to cache, you need to realize that you're going to be missing a lot of the important details if you don't read my book. I go over as many details as I can in the video, but realistically you're going to need to read my book to fill in the gaps. These videos are merely to give you a visual aid to go along with my book. They don't even come close to substituting what is taught in my book. We are going to do Rio's first caching training out of a hole. Now normally I would dig my own training hole, but I was lucky enough to find right by my house this little dry culvert. Now it's pretty easy to find dry culverts, but what you need is one that has a back entrance as well as a front entrance. And I'll explain why that's important in a moment. This is a hide lure. I'm going to start out using the hide lure because it's a lot less tempting than a full carcass lure. So, to set this up, we're basically just going to take the training tube. We're going to put the training tube on one end. We're going to take the lure and we're going to push it all the way through. So you want to have plenty of slack so that Rio can pull this and put it in the box without a problem. And it's just like a foot in that tube, not very far at all. That way it's really easy for her first time to just walk in, grab the lure and pull it out. And if she doesn't do that, if she runs deeper into the hole with it, then I'm going to run to that far side. Let's pretend Rio is trying to take the lure away. I'm just going to grab this string and I'm going to quickly pull it. Obviously a lot faster than this, but I'm just for demonstration purposes. I'm going to pull it until it goes up in the tube. And if your mink's really latched on tight and won't let go, you're going to want to have a bucket of water right here ready to go. And you'll just grab this, pull it out. Your mink will still be attached. Let's pretend she's attached to the lure. She's refusing to let go. So you would just take this, lift it up, plunge her down in the water, and then you'd pull this lure up and hold it underwater till she lets go. When she lets go, you pull the lure up into the caching tube. Now, Rio doesn't hang on to these hide lures very hard, so I don't need to do that. She usually lets go once I pull her head into the tube. She just lets go. So I'm not going to have the bucket of water out today, but when she gets a little older, or maybe once we start using the carcass lure, there's a good chance she'll hang on too much. And rather than run the risk of hurting her teeth or tearing the lure up, plunging them underwater is so much safer and easier to get them to release, because it's simply holding them under till they decide that they want to let go, then they let go. Our attempt to film Rio's first hole caching didn't work out, and so the following footage was actually filmed several days later. You may notice that the lure is now deep in the culvert rather than near the entrance. This is due to the fact that by the time this was filmed, Rio had progressed to the point where we are putting the lure deeper into the culvert and far from the entrance. We see here Rio walks up near the caching tube and the lure, but hasn't discovered the lure yet. And now she picks it up and she runs towards the caching box, but she stops for a moment there and starts to chew on the lure. Now you can't see it very well, but I start tugging on the string there. And that tugging was basically to tease her into taking it back to the box. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to show the earlier stages of this training where I had to tug and tug and tug several times and basically kind of have a tug of war until she pulls it all the way into the box. At this point, she'd already figured out the game, so a couple slight tugs and she took it straight to the box. Why this works is Rio wants to pull the lure away from the pressure to take it to safety. That's why I need to be on the opposite end from the caching box. Here I am, waiting at the opposite end of the culvert with the caching training tube. Tap on the box. Good. Because Rio wasn't caching the lure like she was supposed to, I asked my friend to tap on her caching box to remind her of where it was. Unfortunately, instead of taking the lure to the caching box, she ran away from it. And because of that, I pulled the lure up into the tube as a consequence. Rio needs to learn that the only safe place to keep the lure is in the caching box, not in the hole she's already in. I make Rio wait a couple minutes before I give her the lure again to try for a second time. The waiting for the lure to come is part of her punishment for not doing it right the first time. After a few minutes of waiting, I gave Rio the lure again, and I sit and wait for a few seconds to give her a chance to take it to the box. But since she's just playing with the lure and chewing on it, she gets the consequence again, and I pull the lure up into the caching training tube. Now previously, I would tug on the lure to encourage her to pull it away from the caching tube and towards the caching box, basically teasing her into taking it to the box. However, now she needs to learn to do it on her own. She's got the general idea. We've shown her lots of times, we'll do a little tug, do a little tug. If you take it to the box, we give you a reward. Now she needs to do it on her own. So if she doesn't take it to the box, instead of just tugging, I take the lure away from her completely as a consequence. It's important that Rio learns to take the lure to the box all by herself, because when hunting, there'll be no way to tease her into caching. She'll need to go in, kill the animal, and bring it back entirely on her own. To keep things from getting too boring, I'm going to speed up this video footage as we wait for Rio to go through her consequence for not caching correctly. Now I feel like she's gone through a long enough consequence, so I give her the lure back to give her another try. There we go. It looks like third time was the charm. Rio finally did it right. And there she gets her reward for doing it right. A nice ball of ground meat to eat. I need to show you how to dig a caching training den, just because you might not have the convenience of having a dry culvert near your house. Also, when doing caching training, you need to have multiple different types of holes and multiple different holes to train in, because a mink will get really consistent in one hole. You take them to another one and they totally act like they don't have any training at all, and they'll do all the wrong stuff. So they will revert back to not caching whenever they get introduced to a new hole. So you need to train them in about a half a dozen different holes. And one way to do that is to dig your own and then try and find a couple natural holes. The more you change it up, the more solid the mink's going to be on caching. So this is how you dig a caching training hole. We're going to dig what I call a trench den. To save time, I'm going to speed up the footage so you guys can quickly get the basic idea of what I'm doing. If you notice, the shovel I'm using is a post hole digging shovel. You don't absolutely have to have a post hole digging shovel in order to build a trench den, but the narrower the blade of the shovel, the better. So now that you've dug the trench for the caching training hole, now you need to dig the little back area. So you take a little hand shovel like this, You basically want to dig 2 tunnels that meet here. So now these 2 tunnels meet, you see? Take the caching training tube and put it right down in this little tunnel. See, I've got it at an angle. That's so that you want the angle a little steeper. So I'm going to fill in around it like that. So now it's at a steep angle. Then I'm going to lift it just a little bit. Okay, now at some point I'm going to be using a carcass lure. Now by this time in the video I've actually progressed to the point where I'm using a carcass lure rather than the hide lure. This reaches through the entire caching training hole and then has some excess so it can go into the caching box. So what I'm going to do is take the little lure. In this case, like I said, it's a carcass lure instead of the hide lure. And I just drop it down in the hole. And you see, the little carcass lure is now down in this hole. I'm going to pull it out a little bit. So it's right here. I don't have to, but I'm going to this time. So I got the little carcass lure right there. Now I'm going to bury it good. So that there's no light.
Okay.
So you don't want any cracks of light showing through. So anything that looks like there might be a gap, we're going to bury with this extra dirt. Just the edges of the board. So we don't want any light to be showing through, because in dens, in nature, it's just all one solid tunnel, right? There's no light showing through. So I'm just taking these clumps that I dug up and I'm covering the edges of the board. So there we have it. The caching training hole. Like I said, I call this a trench den. That's the easiest one to dig. This is her first time in a caching training hole. I've always just used the culvert that I showed you up to this point, so now this is her first time. She's got this bewildered look on her face. I really don't think she's gonna do what she's supposed to. I don't know if she's scared or what. Sometimes just taking a mink to a new area throws them off. So I'm not sure what her deal is. Maybe all the digging made her worried. But let's see how she does. You want to try and cache? So I'm going to give her a few seconds, give her to count of 10. Here she's coming back up. So give her a minute, see if she wants to cache. Tease her a little bit with this meat. Rio. I'm crinkling the plastic bag that carries Rio's meat because she knows that crinkling means food. So I'm hoping that will tease her into caching. She's not doing it, so I'm going to try teasing her. So I'm going to give this a few tugs. I feel she's pulling on it. Give it a few more tugs. See if I could tease her out with it. And see, she's just kind of pulling, but she's not taking it out. So I'm just going to take it from her. See if I can pull the rat all the way out. Here I'm speeding up the footage again while we wait through Rio's punishment for not caching. Okay, let's give her another try. Now you saw she took it, but still no mink, so I'm going to give it a couple tugs. Give it a couple tugs. See here, she's coming out with it. Good girl. Good girl. There you go. See, that's how I tease her into putting it in the box. That's why you need the caching training pole on the opposite end of the caching box, so that you could tease her like that into putting it away. See, I just kind of tugged and tugged and tugged until she teased her until she took it to the box, because she could tell something was trying to take it away from her, so she wanted to get away and took it to the box.